Hello, hello. Greetings, everyone. Oh, there we go. Yeah, it's Heather. I was like, is anyone else going to join me with the camera on? It's Heather. Nice. Good morning. Good morning. I think it's mostly good morning to people that are in the region that's morning. Oh, I'm listening to myself again. Heather. I was like, is anyone else going to join me with the camera on? Listen to myself. Oh, hang on. Well, I think it sounded a good morning to people that are. It's always a trap for young players, that one. It's always 20 minutes later that 20 seconds later that the live stream starts playing back again. And I feel like I'm talking to myself. So it's early morning for some, evening for others, like Zach. Hey Zach, good to see you. So I think we've got a couple of questions I think that have come through. Is that right, Heather? Already?
Yes, we have so far.
Okay. So yeah, on the dashboard that you just came through, there's the questions button there. You can click that and enter a question. Anything about Obvio, things that you're trying to play around with, particular features or functions that you're trying to understand more, as entry level or as advanced as you like. We're happy to explore that. And then you might have some questions about your event, your online event. Look at that. There's a blue sighting. Or you might have questions about production. There's always how we make these things work and get the tech working and things like that. We're always up for discussing those things as well. And so you might even have a question where you want to pose to other people that are here, how they might be making something happen. And so we could also explore that and have a conversation about how other people are doing it. But take this opportunity to put some questions in, and we'll start now. Heather, what have we got?
Yeah, so Amy said, when I create a schedule in the blog area, how do I make the time show up as the attendees' time? I think I'm working a nifty 50. I'll take the info into the replay as I'll be coaching this week during the meeting. So she's not on here, but if you could just answer it so she can look back on it.
Sure. Yeah. So in the blog options, there is an option to display the date and time. And now the way that you may be seeing it in the admin would not be in the attendee's time, but the way that the attendee would see it would be in the attendee time. So there's not a way to switch how they're seeing that, but that time would be listed as the attendee time, and you could test that. The tricky thing is often you're testing it and you're in the time zone probably of the event time zone, so it would look the same. But you could actually change your time on your computer, and you could open and then you could reopen the page and you would see that the time has changed. So all of the times for those would be shown as the local time. Yeah. So it's always good with those types of things to have a couple of attendees that you might be that you've added as test attendees, and you could play around with that and see how it looks for different people that might have different tags or groupings or things like that. And that's a way that you could test to see how it looks for those people. Is that a follow-up question, Heather, from Valerie?
Yes, she said, how do you do that in the blog section?
Okay, let's have a look. Just going to pull up a page here and have a look. Actually, we can test this quite well with the dashboard that we're on right now, one that we're using. And let me just quickly go here. Grab my...
Hey, Grant, did you address, and maybe I missed it because I was making myself a coffee, But did you address the fact that Nifty doesn't actually have the agenda feature?
We're not talking about agenda. We're talking about blog publish dates.
Oh, we're not talking about, I thought she was asking about times.
Yeah, unless I read it, unless I heard it wrong. We're talking about blog entry published date and time, Heather?
That's correct.
Okay.
I'll stop asking questions. So
Okay.
I'll go back to my coffee. Thank you.
And do you know, you made me really question myself just then, and I was thinking, did I totally just say the wrong thing? But I'm happy I can see that I can show you exactly what I'm talking about, and that is
I'm so
exactly
happy
how
you
I
were paying attention and I was not.
So what we're talking about is in the blog section. When we look at a blog, you've got here the published date, and you've got hide date. And often what we're doing is for lots of events, we do hide the date because we're sort of using the blog entries as just a way to put lots of content on the page. But there is times that you'd like to show, use it a little bit more like a blog or an update and show exactly when that was posted. It's particularly good when you're doing a multi-day event and you might want to post something at night or the next morning, and it shows exactly when that was posted. Now, remember that through dates throughout all of the Obvio system is based on the event time zone, and that's the event time zone is set. I'm actually going to show you because it's important. Sorry, event settings and then the event time zone. And so for this event, because Blue doesn't think that there's any other time zones in the world other than Eastern time zone, that's what this dashboard is set as. Oh no! Oh, okay. I've got a little smile. This is Eastern time zone, and so for the event that we're all in right now, we consider this is really helpful and something that we didn't have before, but now we're able just to say all the dates and times are based on Eastern time zone. But as my accent would show, I'm not in New York or on the East Coast of America. I'm in Australia. And so when I look at, I'm going to go back and show you what that dashboard, the dashboard and the blog post showed. And what you'll see is the time zone. So you can see here, it's saying 1st of November, 10 a.m. Eastern. And when we look here, same. So November 1st, 10 a.m. We know that it's in the Eastern because that's our event time zone. And I haven't got it hidden. So we're going to see that. And I already have the dashboard open as myself. And so now we can see that it's a very convenient time of 12:30 in the morning. And so that's showing Australian Central Daylight Savings Time. And so that's automatically converting it to show the blog post time in the attendee, actually the computer that they're on, right? So the local time zone for the computer, it's detecting that and then showing that there. And so we have sort of seen that. You can see here as well in the agenda, we see that it's always in the attendees time zone. And look, it's even smart enough to know daylight saving. Look at that, it changed. Isn't that clever? So that's how blog posts work with the date and time. You really don't have to do anything to enable that to be working in the attendees time. It's going to work. And that's why it's really clear there that is their time zone. And so it makes it easy for people to work out when that happened. I think we covered that.
People who are using different languages, like if your dashboard is, if you write the entire dashboard in a language other than English, and your attendees are in a language other than English, those date and times are also the only part of the platform that automatically translate. So if you write the entire dashboard in Portuguese, as an example, and your attendees are Portuguese and they have their computers settings set to Portuguese, then the date format and language will also display in Portuguese automatically. You won't have to do anything there. So that's another thing and that's true of, I'm pretty sure, pretty much every language, based on how that's happening. So whatever language your attendees' computers are set to is what language will display for all of those dates and times within the platform.
We love going into detail about things that we've changed in the past, things that we've worked hard on to make sure that this works. So it's like, just so you know, we've gone into great detail about this to make sure that it works for managing multiple languages. All right, next question.
The next one is from Robbie. He says, is it on the roadmap to download exports instead of an email to download the export? I know there's one place where it will do it naturally, but some you just get the email. And then the second question is for the broadcast feature, it uses a module pop-up, if that's the right term. And I had to write an email 3 times because my mouse clicked outside the box and canceled the whole message.
Yeah. Okay, so the first question, no, we're not planning on making downloads available within the platform. In fact, the one download that is available within the platform, I'd love to know which one that is, because it probably needs to be changed. And there's a specific reason for that, Robbie. Basically, for most of the downloads that are taking place, there's a process that runs to actually gather the information. It's not just click and it just downloads a file. That file is actually built when that process is run. And there's a queue for that process. And generally speaking, that doesn't take very long, but depending on what it is that you're exporting, it may take a while, right? Like if you're exporting a large list of attendees, as an example, that can take a few minutes. So it's not a great user experience to just sit there and wait. So the email to download is the process that we will use for most cases. There's on that front, there is an item that's on our roadmap, which is kind of like a status of notifications. So not only, one of the things that we've talked about including in that status of notifications is the notification that you get via email that your download is ready. So once that happens, then you'd be able to download it from the notification the same way you can download it from the email. But I'll admit that's a roadmap item. And I see that, late this year, possibly early next year, because it's a pretty big shift to how the platform notifies you of things taking place. The second question, I've talked too long, so I forget what the second part to the question was. Oh, broadcasts and clicking out. Yeah. So this is a problem, Robbie, that is not exclusive to broadcasts, because I was writing a blog post yesterday, and I was writing it in the platform, and I accidentally clicked out of the modal or out of the pop-up, same thing that the broadcast uses, and the pop-up goes away. And when that happened, what I had written went away. It turns out that I'm pretty sure that the second version of what I wrote was actually better than the first, but it was annoying. And one of the things that we've discussed.
Are you saying it's a feature?
I'm not saying it's a feature. Definitely not saying that. Not even alluding to the fact that it's a feature. But we're aware of the fact that it's a problem, and it's true of any one of the configuration slide outs, right? If you're if you're configuring a button and you make a whole bunch of changes and then you click out of the sidebar goes away and your changes go away. So there is a universal change that we've talked about implementing, which is essentially when you click out to have a notification that says you're about to lose your changes. Are you sure? Right. And then you can cancel the click essentially. So there is a fix coming for that. But it's a bigger problem than just broadcasts. It's something that we have to do universally across the platform, but aware of it.
Okay.
So the next thing we have is from Mrs. Delvera, we had an issue with the broadcast not being published during our event. How can we ensure that it would work the next time?
That's a great question. And there's a few, this is one of the reasons that broadcasts is in beta and not accessible to everybody. There are some little things that we are working on resolving. One of them is status, right? Like how many emails have actually been sent from this broadcast, the ability for you to see that within the application. What took place over the weekend is we've been transitioning to a new infrastructure over the past couple of weeks. And there was something that got missed in terms of how the communications engine talks to the dashboard engine is essentially what took place. And there's nothing that you would have known because truthfully, we didn't know it was missing until somebody reached out. It may have been you, but there were several people who had their emails not go out over the weekend. And then some of those people actually had their emails go out yesterday. So that took place when we solved the problem because all of those jobs were queued and ready to be sent, but the communication engine wasn't receiving the information. So the problem that you're referring to has been fixed. And we're also working on an update to the broadcast system that would allow you to see a little bit more visibility into the status of those broadcasts. Because right now, the broadcast, there's a little icon that says sent within the platform. And that sent icon is a little misleading because it really just means that this broadcast has been sent to the back end that actually sends the emails. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's been sent. So those are some of the changes that we're talking about internally and how to fix that for you so you can see it as well. Hopefully that wasn't too much information, but there you go.
All right.
And right now we're just waiting for more questions to come through.
Okay.
So during this week, someone was asking about information on how to set up translations in Obvio. If that's something maybe you guys want to go over while we wait for questions.
Sure. So translations is an interesting feature because it's a little codey, if you will. So the platform allows for you to have a dashboard that, first off, let's skip translation as a whole and just talk about multi-language or different languages. Because somebody was asking this week connected to that, can the dashboard or can the system support Hungarian, as an example? And while the user interface of Obvio is written in English and we don't have a translation feature for the interface of the admin that you interact with as a user, pretty much every piece of text on the dashboard is editable by you. And you can put whatever language you want in that text. So if you want to build out a Hungarian dashboard, you can 100% do that. All the way down to being able to modify the email that goes out to people who click on the forgot my password link and have that be in Hungarian as well. So that's thing number one. And there's no feature around that. That's just you typing in the native language of the event that you want it to appear in. But from there is another feature that is in the platform, but I'll just say is, like I said, it's a little codey. So give me a second. Let me find an event that has it. Actually, I'm not going to find an event that has it turned on. I'm just going to go to an old event and we'll turn it on. Let's go to this one here. Okay, so let me share my screen with you. So this is an event that is written in English and has, actually, you know what? I gotta be able to find a simpler event than this. 1 second. Let's just use the old OfferCamp dashboard. We'll ruin this one. Okay, so on the OfferCamp dashboard, you have a bunch of buttons over here, and you have some text over here on the right-hand side. And the feature that we're talking about right now is under features, and it's called translation. And by default, it's disabled, but you can enable it. Now, once you enable it, you have English as the default language, and you can add additional languages. So let's just add French. And actually, I'm not going to add it like that. I'm going to add it like that. I think that's how you spell it in French. I'm not 100% on that. And I'm going to show you why we're going to add it like that in a moment. But this way, we have English and we have Français. Now, from here, that is a starting point. And the default language in this particular case is English. And this gets complicated, but you can change the default language if you want, so that when people land on the dashboard, they see it defaults to the language that you've set. Now, in order to make things have both languages, right? So if I had join the classroom as an example, and I wanted to see that in both French and in English, well, as a starting point, you have to take the text that you're using and you have to move that over to the translation system. So you create a new field and you create what's called a key. And this key is going to be used to embed the text in the feature or the element that you're translating. So I'll call this _button_join. And you can call it whatever you want, but that's how I'm going to name it. And I name things like this when I'm using translation because I want to see by looking at the key, the basics of what this is. So I know this is something that's on the dashboard. I know that it's a button, and join gives me an indication as to what this particular key is. So now I'm going to click save. And I'm going to go back to the dashboard. And I'm going to go to join the classroom, and I'm going to delete the text. And I'm going to put a merge code. So the same way you can put first name, last name, email address as merge codes within your dashboard, you use one of these translation merge codes. So _button_join and close the merge code. So now when I click save, it looks like nothing's changed because it still says join the classroom, right? Now, when I go over to back into translation, if I were to say join the classrooms and click save, and now I go back to design, you'll see that the text now says join the classrooms. So now you would have to basically anywhere you have text that you want translated, you have to create a merge code for it and replace the text in the element. You can do this in right here, right? Like this welcome text. So I'm going to remove the welcome text and I'm going to go welcome_message. Or actually, you know what? I would probably do something like this. Not that it matters, but _welcome. So now I click save and nothing appears. You're like, well, what just happened, Blue? Well, if we go to translations, there is no key for that. So I'm going to go _welcome, and I'm going to paste in the welcome to offer camp and click save. So now when I go back to the dashboard, my welcome to offer camp is there. Now, that's just English so far. That's all we've covered. But once this system is in place, once you have all of your keys and the text for your default language in place, you can switch to the other language. And now you can put the text for the other language. So I'm going to go to translate.google.com, and I'm going to paste in my join the classroom. And I'm going to say, I would like this in French. And I'm just going to copy that, assuming for the moment that that's right. And I'm going to paste it in here. And then I'm going to go back to Google Translate, and I'm going to grab my welcome to offer camp. Bienvenue au, all right, camp d'offre, fine. And I'm going to go over to Obvio, and I'm going to say, welcome to OfferCamp. And now click save. Okay, so now you're like, okay, that's awesome, great. Or maybe you're saying that's a pain in the butt, which you're right. How do I see the language that we're referring to? Good question. The only way to see the translated languages right now is actually to log in as an attendee. So what I'm going to do next is, because I want to see the work that I've done, I'm going to log in as me. And there's going to be two things, or one thing that you notice when you load the dashboard right away, and that is that there's this new change language button in the bottom right-hand corner. That button appears when the actual translation feature is enabled. So once the translation feature is enabled, now you have your two different languages. Now, this is where the reason that I typed in Français rather than French shows up, because for attendees, when they click on that, they'll see their language in the name that you called it in the translation system. And I like to have the language show up in the native language itself, right? So rather than it saying French in English, it's saying French in French. So now when I click on Français, you'll see that it says Rejoindre la salle de classe for the join the classroom, and Bienvenue au camp d'offre for welcome to OfferCamp. Now, everything else is in English. And everything else is in English because we didn't create merge codes for the rest of the dashboard. But to go through the rest of the dashboard, all you have to do is continue to add new fields and grab your copy or your keys and go back to the dashboard and replace all the text that you want translated with the keys, and take the actual English text and put it in the translation system, click save, and then change to French and put in your translation to French. So it's a little complicated to use, but can be very powerful. We've had events that have 7, 8 languages that are all in place. And once you have the key system built out, it's nice because to enter in the languages, you don't have to go to all the different pages. You literally just go to the language that you want to update, go to the key or the field that you want to update, and you change the text. And you can change the text for your entire dashboard on that one page. And what most of our clients are doing is they're taking the English dashboard, they're sending it to a translator and saying, hey, can you please translate this? And you get a Word doc back, or I'm getting a Word doc back that is like, here's the English and here's the French version. And it's all on one page. So I usually have Microsoft Word opened on one side of my screen and Obvio open on the other. And I'm scrolling down through the different keys and I'm just copying and pasting all of the translation into the dashboard. And then when I click save down at the bottom, it's done. I don't have to go through every single thing. Now, that's how it works currently. We are working on one of our long-term projects, but it keeps getting bumped because it's relatively low priority. Not a lot of people use the translation feature. I think we use it more than anybody else. But we are working on a way to go to the dashboard editor or any page that you're editing, because that merge system, that translation system works everywhere. It works on the login page, on your check-in pages. It works on the speakers, on sponsors, on FAQs, on forms. It literally works everywhere. But you have to have the text and those merge codes in translation in order for it to work. But we are working on and we have it conceptually done, a way for you to, once you have multiple languages selected, from the editing pages, change what language you're editing in, and you just put it in line inside the editor, and it will automatically do what's taking place on the translation system page. So we're working on a change to that, but it's a fairly complicated change that takes quite a bit of code because it shows up everywhere within the platform. So it's a work in progress. My guess is that that'll happen by the end of this year, an update to that translation system. So there you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we had a question come in during that time from Valerie. She wants to know if you'll be sending out an email in regards to TVE to past attendees.
We will, but you can just go to sagehub.com and register at the early bird price. So just sagehub.com. And the early bird price is $97. I believe the price goes up mid-April. You're welcome. Looking forward to having you there.
You're currently waiting on more questions. Does anyone who's in this room have any questions? Hi, Irina.
Irina. Go for it. Yep.
Okay. Just a comment maybe. When I try now, I'm so happy with visibility rules. I know it's Grant's favorite. I finally got it. So I know how it works. So I have, like we had before, we talked about it, 2 separate groups, and I need to post the video for one group so nobody else can see it, and the opposite one, the same thing. So I've done it. It works. However, the comment is, is there any maybe sequence of steps to do? Because I need to do the visibility rule. I need to put the post, the title of the post, and then I need to save the video itself. It takes me several attempts to do it, because if I put the video, then the post will not save, then the visibility rule will not save, then the video will not save. So I go through the loop several times to even do it. I don't know if it's not saving right, or maybe I'm not taking the steps exactly how it's supposed to be, but it never just all 3 things together. It's always, it's not saved, it's not saved, it's not saved, do it again.
Yeah, so great question. And this relates a little bit to something similar to what Robbie asked around the state of those modals, of those configuration panels. So what I'll say is, first off, on the video not saving, are you using an embed code, or are you using, yeah. So I don't know if this is what you're doing, Irina, but when
I'm sorry. No. I'm just putting link. I didn't know about embed code.
So are you putting a link?
I just put the link.
Like to a YouTube video?
Yes.
Okay. So generally speaking, there is a bug where if you go from the blog post editor to visibility rules and then back, but you save it in the wrong sequence, that it doesn't work. And I honestly, I'll be frank with you, I noticed it like a month or so ago, and I haven't gone back to try and recreate the problem. So I haven't given it to the developers to fix. So I will, now that somebody else has noticed it, I will add it to our list of things to fix. But what I'll say to you is, what I do from a best practices perspective is I build the blog post first and I save it, just the blog post by itself. Then I go back into the blog post and I go to visibility rules. I add my visibility rules. I click back and I save. And that
I've done that too, because I've done so many different ways. So I figured that part.
And I'll tell you that order works. Now, you may be thinking, or you like other folks may be thinking, but what about the visibility rules? I don't want those visibility rules to show. I don't want the blog post to show to the wrong people at the wrong time, even though it's a really short window of time. When I'm working on an active event, I disable the blog post before I save it. So I disable the blog post, I save it, I create the blog post and I save it. Then I go back in, I modify the visibility rules, and then I re-enable the blog post and save.
Yeah, eventually I was able to save all my videos, but it was a long process.
Yeah, it's you're not wrong, and it really just has to do with like what what is that Grant showing his
Yeah.
screen?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
if you, yeah. And same here. If you're disabling it and whatever you do here and you go, it's going to reset. And so exactly how Blue just said it at the moment, disable, save, that's created it. It's disabled. So no one can see this. And now I can go back in, I can set my visibility rules. I can go back. It'll all still be there. I can then enable it and save it. And now that'll work. So it's just a slight workaround at the moment, but that's the best way to do it.
Yeah.
Just do
The other
one
thing,
screen.
yeah, not to make your life complicated, but the other thing you could do is if you do your visibility rules first and then do the blog post and save, it'll also work. But it's just easier for now. Just build the blog post, save it, go back in, add your visibility rules, save, and good.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions?
Take that as a no.
I love this. This is so good. I love when I show up and there's no questions.
Yeah.
I do wish when I show up for an 8 a.m. call and there are no questions that I made the call happen at 9 a.m. But all good. Grant wouldn't like that.
Daylight saving was good for me. It's
has that happened? Are we now only 12 hours apart?
Yeah, now it's nicer. It's sort of,
so it's, what is it, 9:30?
10 o'clock. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here now at night. It's better than midnight.
Because it's 2.5 hours. Got it. Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. And look, you've already done a little video as well that we can, a little translation video. So you've done that.
All right. So why don't we tell the group about this? So last night, some of you may have gotten an email at the last minute, but last night we had a little a promotion for Obvio to the Sage list. And we, generally speaking, tried to not send it to existing Obvio subscribers. So some of you may have seen it, some of you may not have. But one of the things that we announced yesterday is during the month of April, we're doing essentially an onboarding workshop. So we're going to be adding some calls that we will probably send you an email about so that you can add them to your calendar if you wish to join us. But essentially on Tuesdays and Thursdays for the next 4 weeks, starting next week, we're going to be doing a full feature deep dive on the platform. And what I'm going to be doing is very similar to how Grant gets me to record these short little snippets of video. The entire 8 modules is going to be that. I'm going to record a snippet of video that everybody will watch or see me do. And then I'm going to pause, take questions on that feature set, and then go to the next piece. And the idea is over the course of those 8 calls to go through the entire platform, start to finish, and then take all of those videos and embed them into the platform so that you have little pieces and parts, right? So when you go into a button editor and you're like, what does this do? You have a little question mark icon that you can click on and it pops open a short video that shows you how to format your buttons, things like that. So we're kind of killing 2 birds with 1 stone in that we have some new users who are coming on board. So you'll start to see some new faces into these calls. And in order to get those new users up to speed as quickly as possible, we need some better documentation. We don't have that yet. This 8-week program gives us the opportunity to actually do that. So it starts next week. I don't know the times yet. I have to look at a calendar, but my gut is it's probably going to be Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. So that's probably what time it's going to take place at, but keep an eye on your inbox, or in the Facebook group. We'll announce it there as well, to get you full access. Sarah Cole, I have questions, just don't know what to ask as a newbie. I have a lot more exploring and trial and error to do. So Sarah, what I want to say to you is, any question you have, like, it could be as simple as, how do I create an event? Like, I don't even have an event, or how do I decide what template to choose, or how do I choose a template? Or I don't have any attendees, but when I have attendees, how do I import them? Like, we don't care what the question is on these calls, especially for those of you who are brand new. Any question you have is on the table, and will not be looked negatively upon, mostly because I'm well aware, as is Grant and Heather, that our documentation for the application is lacking. Right. And, that's largely because we've been feature focused rather than documentation focused. But the month of April, we're going to try and shift that pretty significantly to get a lot more little pieces and parts of documentation into the application. So somebody who's brand new, who's looking at the organization page and wondering what the F is this, can know what the organization page is. When they get to the event page, they can know that. When they, see a little team icon up at the top, and they're like, what's team? How do I deal with that? You'll understand what those things are. How to use the form system, how to use image entries, how to use integration with the various tools that you can connect Obvio to, how to use some of the more advanced features like image entries, and and how to use the emoji system in a way that is interesting, even if you don't have a large LED wall behind you, right? Little things like that. So we're going to be going through the platform really heavily and taking a look at, in part, all of the questions that you guys ask, and making sure that we have all of the most frequently asked questions documented during this month, as well as other things that you don't ask questions about. So that's kind of on the list, and everybody who's an Obvio user is invited to attend live. But then, of course, they'll also be recorded.
Yeah, I did wonder, Blue, if as a quick start guide, that's not necessarily a walkthrough of the whole platform, but the bare bones of getting an event and a Zoom meeting going could be valuable. And then that gets the start going. And then now, when you're doing a particular thing, you can then find the video about that function. But the quick start is kind of like, here's setting up the first organization and the first event and that type of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Robbie just asked a question. Forms and tech check have been updated. Have forms and tech check been updated since November of 22? I tried to add data collection form on check-in, but half my users were stopped from checking in, so I disabled it. So I guess my question would be, did they stop checking in, or were they technically not able to check in? Because we use that form collection feature all the time on the waiver step. Sometimes there's some confusion because people don't realize they have to click the checkbox and then sign the form. And I will tell you, one of the features that we have on our list, or I have on my wish list to get added to the check-in step, is actually to split the waiver, or have the option to split the waiver and the form, so that if you want to do a form but you don't want to do a waiver, you can still do that. Because right now you have to do a waiver in order to do the form. And where people normally get stuck, it's not that it's technically not working, it's that the user isn't checking the box and signing the waiver step, right? So generally speaking, that's where people get stuck. I don't remember when we did it, Robbie, but we did add some color settings to the checkbox. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I don't think there are any other major changes that we've done since November on that waiver step. But I'll tell you, I know it works because we just had an event for Tony Robbins that had like, I don't know, almost 30,000 people register, and they all had to fill out that form. And I promise you, whatever form you have is less complicated than the form that they have. So it's there, it works, and it, generally speaking, doesn't prevent people from checking in. I have seen instances where people ask the wrong questions or ask too much information, and that prevents people from checking in, especially for a free event, right? So if you go to log into a free event and there's this big, long 22-page survey before you even get access to the event, sometimes people just back away and be like, yeah, I don't want to take part in this. This sounds like it's just a sales thing because they're trying to get information from me. But for paid events, generally speaking, we don't see any pushback. However, with that being said, I usually recommend to our clients that they keep the amount of questions to under 5. And generally, I aim them towards 3, to be honest, and that the questions are all multiple choice or radius select. I rarely ask people to, or recommend that they put text boxes in their online surveys, like their intake surveys, because for the same reason that you're probably thinking, which is the more barrier to entry you have, the more likely it is for people to stop. So generally speaking, one of our best practices for the waiver step is basically just getting what is some key information that would be helpful for you as the host to know in the aggregate about your attendees, right? Well, it would be good to know how many employees they have. Okay, great. So let's do a multiple choice question, or that has a radio select question. That is, 1 employee, 2 to 10, 11 to 25, or whatever the range is for you, right? And have multiple ranges, and then, 50 plus. And that can then be exported and dropped into Excel or Google Sheets or something along those lines. And you can create a pie graph in like 10 seconds and see information about your audience, which is valuable. Maybe you're looking to find out how long they've been in business. Great. Less than a year, 1 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, 10 years plus, whatever. Again, so it's really simple and easy, like click, done. And then, maybe the last thing is you're looking for a revenue number. And I usually don't, we never put, when we put a revenue number inside of a waiver step question, I never put a text box allowing them to put the actual revenue number. It's always a range, right? Under 100,000, 100 to 250, 250 to 500, 500 to a million and up, right? So again, just trying to keep it simple so that people don't think this is a very personal question, right? It's just more in the range. And then from your perspective, if you knew that information about that one person, would it be valuable? And I think in those 3 options, or in those 3 examples, the answer is most likely, right? It would be useful to know how long they've been in business, how many employees they have, and what their revenue is for the year, or at least what their range is, because even knowing their range will tell you enough information for whatever your next step is. And then it's also helpful for, your entire attendance. You know what? Great. 50% of our, of our attendees have more than 10 employees. 25% of our attendees are generating more than $1 million in revenue. We're doing something right. Or if you have 95% of your audience that has less than $100,000 in revenue, maybe I'm doing something wrong, right? So you can see information like when we're crafting those intake surveys, we're looking to see information that could be useful to tell us something, like, is our marketing working? Are we getting our right fit client to the event as the whole? And then the next step, and less important, but still valuable, is if I were to look at this information for one specific person, would it be valuable in a conversation? So that's kind of what our goal is with an intake survey. And like I said, generally speaking, we highly recommend that they keep it under 5. And we aim people to, or we suggest that people really do 3 questions. Any update on attendee report times? That should be fixed going forward. There's a gap. The same problem, I'll tell you this, the same problem that happened with the communication engine, where the communication engine wasn't talking to the event engine, basically, happened to the statistics engine 2 weeks ago. So there was a 5 to 7 day gap in stats. So it's and it's just because of the way things happened, that information is just gone. It's not in the platform. Now, if you need information specifically about an event that happened during that gap in information, reach out to us just at help@obv.io, and we can pull the native Zoom reports for you to get access to attendance information. So, but going forward, it's solved in the user interface. But for some of the retroactive data, if you're like, you know what, I know I had people in Zoom, but when I export, it doesn't show me anything, or it's showing me the wrong information. Like, I'm positive this person was there for more than 3 minutes and it's only showing you 3 minutes. First off, we want to know that stuff so that we can double check to see if our data is wrong. But second off, our team can actually, like I said, dive into the native Zoom app and pull some of those reports for you to give you pretty much the same information.
And then Blue, we did have a couple of questions come through as well.
Great. This is usually what happens if Grant and I just all of a sudden just start talking, and it triggers people to ask another question.
So Irina wants to know which way of posting a video on the blog, embedding it or just adding the link, is better, or if there's a difference, or if any way is the same.
If you're using YouTube, my preference, I like just using the media icon and pasting the link because the platform, the text editor does a really good job of scaling the video based on the blog size. Whereas if you use, depending on the platform that you're working with, the embed codes, like for YouTube, the embed codes don't, my recollection anyway, is that they don't always scale natively. They're not dynamically sized. But when you just use the media embed through the link for YouTube, they are. And so that's what I use when I'm embedding a video. But if I'm using Wistia as an example, I use the embed code. Bottom line, Irina, just keep doing what you're doing.
Another question is from Miss Devera. She's curious what the best practice is in naming our attendees so the speakers would show up at the top of the participants list in Zoom. We tried adding a period at the start of their name, but it didn't work. The speakers still showed up alphabetically.
So if you really want your speakers to show up at the top of the participant list in Zoom, when they join Zoom, make them a co-host. That's the easiest way to do it. And then you don't have to add something weird to their name and hope that they show up properly. If you make them a co-host, then everybody who's a co-host shows up at the top. With minor exceptions, if you have a whole bunch of people who raise their hand, usually the hands raised goes up to the top of the participant list. But co-hosts, generally speaking, are all at the top.
And then Kat posted in chat, she wanted to know about OfferCamp, if you use the Obvio sales page, and if you could share what that setup looked like.
We didn't. Later, Robbie. That was a quick question. We didn't use the, I'll give you a slightly longer answer. We didn't use the Obvio marketplace for the offer camp opt-in form. We're just using ClickFunnels. There you go. Yeah, it's pretty simple. Are you talking about, was it offer? I feel like it's like offer camp 23. sagehub.com. Let's see. Are you talking about this page, Kat? I think you probably are.
Yes, I thought it was really well done.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of this, not all of it, but a lot of this you could probably do. You could probably come really close anyway. With the page editor or with the marketplace page editor. Rather than try and do that in real time, I'll make a note to see if I can replicate that offer camp. The offer camp opt-in page in marketplace.
Thanks so much.
Mm-hmm. All right. Any other questions?
Did you want to share the news about how attendees are counted?
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's new. I forgot about that. So in our continuous effort to try and make the platform more approachable and to have you use it more and more and more, one of the things that we have heard over the course of the last few months as people have started to use Obvio for free events is, I wish it only tracked people who actually showed up to my event rather than everybody. Robbie, as an example, who was on the call recently, had something like 1,100 people go through his webinar sequence, but not that many people actually showed up. He had less than 500 people actually show up. But once you get up over 500 attendees, you have to pay for additional blocks or increased capacity for that particular event. And you know, in the grand scheme of things, it's very reasonable, right? It's $100 for an additional 250 attendees for each event. And when you have events that are paid events, that's a really reasonable price point. But when you have events that are free events, that can be a little less reasonable. So we made the decision, I want to say about 2 weeks ago, to see if we could make a shift in the tracking or in how Obvio counts attendees from registered attendees to active attendees. And that went live over the weekend. So now you can have an event that has 100,000 people registered, but only if less than 500 people are active participants in your event, then it won't charge you anything extra. So it's a really big change. And the purpose behind it is so that Obvio is easier for you to use for free events, because it's free events that generally speaking have this big disparity between registered users and active participants, right? The people who actually show up. So let me also tell you what an active participant means, or an active attendee. An active attendee is anybody who has logged in and created a password or signed the waiver or been checked in or lands on the dashboard. If they've done one of those 4 things, they're immediately counted as an active participant. So we're not counting people within Zoom specifically. We're just saying if your attendee basically hits the dashboard and goes through the process at some point, they're now counted as an active participant. And that's something that's easy for you to see because on the Obvio settings page or under statistics, you can see how many people have checked in, right? So in this particular case, this event had 6,900 people that were registered, but 2,357 checked in, which makes them an active participant. Then we would not have been charged for 6,910. We would have been charged for 2,357. Same thing if I were to go to let's say the virtual event on virtual events, number 4, and I go to statistics, I have 1,427 who actually were registered. I had 913 checked in. I had 950 who signed the waiver. And then we had 1,423 who had their password created. Now, this is a little bit wonky because we did something weird here, but in this particular case, password created would have been considered an active participant, so 1,423. But if we go and take a look at like TVE5 as an example, 1,093 attendees, 785 checked in, 828 waiver signed, 839 password created. 839 is what we would have been charged for because they are considered an active participant. So even though there's a disparity of 11 people between waiver signed and checked in, or a little under 100 between password created and checked in, anybody who hits the system and is using the platform in some way is considered an active participant. So it's a pretty big shift. And especially if you take a look at what we've done since November of, when did we get rid of was it November of last year, Grant? When did we get rid of the credit system?
Yeah,
2022.
about that.
Yeah, so since November of 2022, we eliminated the credit system entirely and went to an unlimited event model where you can have unlimited events for up to 500 registered attendees. We've now modified that so that you can still have unlimited events for up to 500, but we're no longer counting registered attendees. We're now counting active attendees. So we are, again, continuing to try to make the platform as approachable and usable and easy to understand for you as possible. And I think that'll be a really big bump, especially for those of you who are using the platform for free events. And if you're not using the platform for free events because you were concerned about credit usage, that concern has gone away. If you're not using the platform because you were concerned about the fact that when you do a free event, you register 2,500 people, but only 250 show up, and you didn't want to pay for 2,500 attendees, you no longer have to. Now you would pay for the people who show up at 250. So it's pretty awesome. And I hope you guys like it as much as we do. All right. Any other questions, Heather James?
Wow,
No.
a little quiet this morning.
It's like everybody has it's a quiet Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, I'm going to finish my coffee. As I do this, I'll let you guys think about additional questions, but if there isn't any, we'll call it.
Do you have any update on the affiliate program, Blue?
Yeah. So if anybody wants to, the affiliate program is currently working. And one of the things that we've instituted is a free trial within the platform. So for new users who come on board, they can of course come on board as a paying member right away. But if you have people who are like, you know what, I'd really love for you got to check out Obvio. It's pretty awesome. We do now have a free trial system that we've enabled. So for now, we're going to call the affiliate system a beta. So if you have people that you'd like to share it with, just reach out to us and say, hey, can you turn on my affiliate module? But essentially what will wind up happening when that happens is if you click on your account, you'll see this new icon at the top that says Share Obvio. And when you click on that Share Obvio item, you'll be asked to first off select a payout method. And generally speaking, we pay via PayPal. So that's really what you'll have to select. And then on the dashboard, you will be asked to upload some tax forms. And that's just to keep everything above board, of course. There's a notice that you'll see that you get a 30% commission on recurring revenue that comes from people that you recommend. And you have a link that is the default link that you can copy. And that default link that you copy is what your affiliate link is right there. So it's nice and easy to do. And that affiliate link takes you to the order form currently. And the only reason that we really haven't turned on the affiliate system for everybody is because we don't have right now, although we're starting to work on it, we don't have what I would call a marketing site, right? We don't have a page that defines what Obvio is. You guys know what it is because you use the platform. So it's difficult to say to somebody here, help us spread the word, but there's no word to spread. It's just an order form, right? So that's the reason that we haven't technically turned it on. There's no technical reason for it, meaning there's no bugs in the platform. We're using a third-party service to track the affiliate links. It works really, really nicely. But the plan is and was to wait to turn it on officially for everybody until we actually have a marketing site that link can be sent to. Because then you can just actually share it nice and easily. And when you share that link, it takes them to a page that defines what Obvio is, and so on and so forth. So I know that's a long-winded answer to a pretty simple question, Heather, but that's the reason why it's not turned on. But some interesting information that you may have learned in that is that we pay 30% commission to anybody who you send our way, and we pay that for the duration of their subscription. That's not just on the first payment. That's not just for the first year. If they stick with Obvio for 10 years, then you would get 10 years worth of 30% of whatever their annual subscription or whatever their subscription payments are. Little things to note, so some small caveats. Things that are not commissionable are upgrades to individual events, right? So if they purchase additional add-ons to increase capacity or to increase the number of Zoom rooms they have access to, those aren't commissionable. It's just their monthly charge. So there you go. Hope that was valuable. But we are really excited about the free trial, number one. The offer that we made yesterday to non-users is a 30-day free trial, and there were a couple of bonuses, pretty much everything you guys get access to already, but they were positioned as a bonus, such as these Q&A calls, right? And then also the workshop that's taking place this coming week, and then there were a couple of other little things as well. The standard sign up, people are going to have the ability to still have a 30-day free trial. They will still get the positioning of these Q&A calls as something that we will continue to do because we think they're valuable. And not only do we think that they're valuable for you, but they're actually valuable for us as well. Because there are times that we find, or that you guys find, bugs that we didn't really even know existed. So that's all part of it. Anyway, any other questions? I do have one last sip of coffee. Go ahead, Kyle.
I don't have a question, but I do have a comment. So, just like what you just said, just piggyback off what you just said, I am one of those people who uses Obvio for free events a lot. And I have been on most of these Q&As, and not because I'm necessarily having an event or not because I necessarily having a question, but when I do have a time that I'm going to be using Avio and I'm doing something that seems a little weird, I do text the very gracious Chuck, and he'll give me an instruction, and I'm able to interpret that instruction. And the reason that I'm able to interpret the instruction is because I have sat here so many hours and so many days just listening to what you have to say. And also, of course, when I've had my own questions, I've been able to ask them on these Q&As, but I found them to be very valuable. And you are the only people who knows what I'm talking about most of the time anyway. So that's my comment.
I think that's good, and I'll say you're welcome. All right, awesome, guys. Well, if there are no other questions, we're going to cut today's call a little short, because as you heard, we're going to be adding a whole bunch of stuff over the course of the coming weeks, specifically as it relates to recording of features and so on and so forth. So with that, have an awesome week. If you have an event coming up, good luck with your event. It's going to be awesome. If you don't, keep using the platform. Should be lots of fun. And we will see you next week. Next week's call, of course, is an afternoon call. So 5 p.m. Eastern time. That's right, the world's time, Grant. 5 p.m. Eastern time next Wednesday. And between now and then, you can always reach us in the live chat within the application, or by email at help@obv.io, or in the Facebook group. So plenty of opportunities for you guys to get your questions answered, not just on these calls. You don't have to wait a week if you have a question the moment this call ends. And with that, we're going to end the call. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.